You're listening to the Word Slinger Podcast, episode 006, Storytelling Through Tragedy with Tammy McDonald. This episode of the Word Slinger Podcast is brought to you by Happy Pants Creative. We have everything you need to help your business do more business. Start with us online today at happypantscreative.com.
It's the Word Slinger Podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented Pants Optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger.
Word Slinger.
Hi. Things are going to sound a little different because at the moment I am actually I'm podcasting from my truck, which if you've paid any attention to me on YouTube, and most people don't, which is probably wise, I do a lot of video blogging from my truck. Now I promise I am not driving at this moment. I promise I'm parked. Although I do have the engine running because it is stifling in here, so I have the AC going, so you're probably going to hear a little noise, so I'm really sorry about that. It just turned out that the wrapper I recorded before has become unusable, so so here I am with my makeshift little studio in the truck. I gotta say though, this is not too bad. I'm using for the tech geeks in the crowd, I'm using a Zoom H2, which is the older little brother of the H4n that I use in my studio, in my home studio, which I actually only use as a pass-through for my studio microphone and everything. But I'm listening in on this. Doesn't sound too bad. So anyway, the tech geek part is over, and today we're going to be talking with a very good friend of mine. I've known her actually since high school, and although we fell out of touch for quite a few years, when we reintroduced ourselves to each other, she was considering writing a book about sort of the trials and tragedies she faced and how she got through them with a faith-based approach. And she authored a book called Shifted Vision, and she has since turned this into a ministry. It's kind of fascinating to see how it's all rolled out. I happen to be a believer. I'm a Christian. I have a strong faith in God, and I look at something like what Tammy is doing, and I see that I see something remarkable, which is remarkable and miraculous all jammed together. Which, as a word slinger, I can officially say that that's now a word. So go and be remarkulous. Tammy McDonald has she's written this book. She's currently in the midst of a rewrite, sort of a second edition, and she's pulling together a workbook that goes with it. But she's built an entire ministry around this, and I think that's just outstanding. I mean, I think it's great. And I talked to her about the use of story and how tragedy folds into our story, because tragedy is a part of our daily lives, and it's part of developing who we are. It's part of our story. So I will let us get straight to that. And I promise the audio is much cleaner in that. So enjoy. Hi there. So I'm with my good friend Tammy McDonald, who is the author of Shifted Vision, finding new life in the midst of devastation. Hi, Tammy. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you today, Kevin?
I'm fantastic. I'm a little off because, and I apologize because we just had a little snafu on timing. So I don't hide anything from anybody on this show. Everybody gets to see all the warts. So
good. I'm all about being transparent. So,
so now I've read your book. My wife's read your book, and you've got a whole ministry built around this book. Why don't you tell me a little about that? Or tell me what the book is about. Let's start there.
well, okay, I'll start with my elevator pitch. How's that? And that'll be the only pitchy thing I do.
Let's do it.
We all know that life falls apart, but the trick is realizing that you don't have to. And so whether it's through my book, Shifted Vision, whether it's through speaking engagements, whether it's through one-on-one coaching or group coaching, I can help you find hope in those hopeless circumstances.
Okay.
And so there's my pitch, ta-da-da, that's the only canned part about me. So basically the book it gives people hope. It lets you realize I'm all about those aha moments. I say the difficult things that people maybe be thinking, but they're not willing to say because it's taboo, it's not proper, it's not acceptable. So I break down what people feel and think and experience when they realize that they're infertile, when somebody that they love unexpectedly dies, when you get a diagnosis with cancer, when you've been laid off from a job that you were expecting to retire from. I poke a stick at all of those things and say, okay, I know this is what you're feeling because these are the paths I've walked and this is what I've felt, and my mission is to let you know that you're not alone in how you feel. There's nothing wrong with you, there's nothing broken, but there is hope. You don't have to stay stuck in those broken places. And the book itself actually stems from a very broken place in my life where my 19-year-old cousin was killed in a car wreck, and how I walked with his mom through the rebuilding of a life, basically, because everything about her life in just one sentence was gone. And she really struggled, but I was able to see God in those circumstances and how he provided nuggets of hope even when things were so bleak and so painful. And I helped her see those and cling to those, and that helped her start again. And I was able to see that with my family, and I've noticed that it's a pattern in basically all losses. And so that's what I want to do. I want to shift your vision from the loss and the devastation and basically the rubble of your life that is just fallen at your feet because of this personal earthquake. Shift your vision from all of the broken pieces, and let's dig through and find the hope that's there in the midst of it, the new life and the new direction that God plans for you to travel from, based on Jeremiah 29:11.
Yeah, that's the and I'm gonna you're gonna call me out. I'm gonna try to quote it. You ready?
Okay.
All right, let me think. It's Jeremiah 29:11. I should know this. It says, that's the one where he says, "I know the plans I have for you, and that they're plans to prosper you and not to harm you."
Plans for you to have a hope and a future.
Yes.
And that's people forget that last part. They think that if I buried a child, that means I have no future, I have no hope, I've got to stay stuck in grief and almost a sense of martyrdom from that moment of impact. And that's not the case. That's not what God wants for us. That was not his plan.
Yeah. And that's it's such it's so painful to think about. When we're in the midst of these tragedies, it's a little scary at times. I mean, how does somebody cope with that? You just lost a child, or you just lost someone you really care about. I mean, it's hard to just turn that over to your Creator. So what's the first step there?
Breathe.
Yeah.
Breathe, because there's several roles when a tragedy strikes, and when the tragedy is in your world, then that means you're the survivor. So picture a natural disaster on a global scale or a community scale, and everyone's experiencing the same thing. So you have a group of survivors. Well, if it is a personal devastation, then you are the survivor of whatever it is that's happened. So in a natural circumstances, you're going to have survivors that are shell-shocked. You're going to have survivors that are they just can't even fathom what has just happened. Yeah. And that's the way even in a personal disaster, that's what we experience. I've never heard anybody talk about the dynamics with a personal disaster follows the exact same pattern of a natural disaster in regards to survival and being a survivor and the recovery process. And it truly is one step at a time, and giving yourself permission to grieve, but realizing what is healthy grief and what is unhealthy grief.
So what's the distinction there? What's the difference between healthy and unhealthy grief?
Unhealthy grief is the grief that a lot of us stay stuck in because it's clinging to the things of the past. Healthy grief is a process of not ignoring or rejecting the things of the past, because you always hear people say, oh, suck it up, buttercup, and get over it. Yeah. And we all have those things that we go and we say, we just can't get over this. This was too large of an earthquake, too big of a magnitude of a loss. But what they mean is, they're talking about getting over it, and in their brain they may think that you're supposed to get over it. But in reality, if you're walking through healthy grief keeps you moving forward. Yeah. And healthy grief says, I'm going to feel what I'm going to feel. This is a natural thing. I lost something. I have to acknowledge what this something was in my life, but I also have to realize that something isn't there anymore today. It won't be there tomorrow. And so a healthy grief doesn't cling to the things of the past. It honors the things of the past. When an unhealthy grief clings to the things of the past.
This podcast is all about story, and this is a part of story, your personal story that a lot of people don't like to dwell on. I don't personally. I mean, I've lost some people in my life. My grandmother was a very dear person in my life, and I still, to this day, she died in 97. I still wake up, late in the night sometimes, sad and in tears because I miss her, but when it comes to how that has helped shape me as a person, I recognize that a lot of the choices I made after she passed away came from that relationship. Like I did something in her honor. I did something that I thought she would approve of. I mean, do you think that's a healthy part of grief, or is that? That's absolutely healthy. You don't just say, okay, I'm supposed to be done with this, and so I stuff and never remember anything about this person again. Yeah. You honor that person with moving forward and establishing a good life and making good choices. As opposed to, I was writing yesterday, and this revelation came to me. The reason I believe we get stuck in grief and it becomes negative grief, unhealthy grief, is because we're trying to make whatever the loss is make sense. Mm-hmm. We want to understand. And as I was pondering that yesterday as I was writing, I realized it's not that we want to understand from a matter of reason. We want to understand how it worked or what happened so we can control it and try and undo it. Yeah, we're trying to rewrite that story.
We are. And with you saying that, I remember the first time I heard anybody talk about this alternate ending scenario, and it was actually a movie, and it was Sweet Home Alabama, and it was the first movie that I'd seen that had an alternate ending posted with the DVD, and so I watched it. And if you've ever seen that, the ending they went to was much better than what the one they were originally going to go with. But that's what happens, whether it's even issues with our spouses or arguments with our boss or anything. We continue to run those same conversations through our head over and over again, really trying to make it have a different result. And those places become sticky. It becomes quicksand, and we can't move forward. We can't function at our best, and we can't embrace anything new or good that comes our way because we're still trying to change something of the past.
Yeah. Some of the authors that I read talk about doing things like you sort of mentally rewrite that story, as you sort of visualize the whole thing turning out different. Something that was tragic in your life, you actually go through the whole story again and cast a different light on. Do you see something like that as being healthy, or is that are we just living in denial at that point?
It just depends, because the tragedy started with my 19-year-old cousin dying in a car wreck. Mm-hmm. Well, that story has been rewritten because the story didn't end at the tragedy. Now there is a book about how God carried us through. There is an entire ministry, and I now operate as a grief and loss coach. Yeah. To help. So that's the rewriting that we did, and so it just depends. If you're rewriting, you can rewrite the story and delude yourself into thinking that it's something different than it actually was. Or you can let Romans 8:28, where it says all things work for the good of those who love the Lord and who are called according to his purpose.
Yeah.
We can let him work those things that in our logical human mind make no sense, and there's no way anything good could ever happen. But you submit those broken pieces to the Lord, and he will make something beautiful. So he's the one that gives you your alternate story.
Yeah.
And it's not something you force or you contrive or you remake in your head, but you just submit. Basically, he's the great recycler, and he recycles those broken pieces of your life and makes them into something else.
I like that. I like that a lot, because that's, if you're going to talk about rewriting a personal tragedy, you don't want to forget the events happened. I mean, that's not your goal, but I like that idea of taking it and repurposing it or giving it purpose. And as you said earlier, usually when you're going through grief, you're looking for the reason behind something, and it's probably not going to be there. You're not going to find it by dwelling on it, but you can actually give it purpose by taking it and building something from it.
Exactly. And I think a lot of times, especially with a tragedy is a tragedy, but there's some tragedies that just shake us to our absolute foundation. And like burying a child is one of those.
Yeah.
Because logically it should never happen. And with that, it's hard, because what I've seen parents do, and I've worked with a lot of parents who've lost children, what they do is they feel if they move forward from that, they are forgetting that their child existed, or their child was important, or their child had value. And their biggest fear is that the world is going to forget that their child even existed.
Yeah.
And so what you do at that point is you take it day by day and you figure out a way to build a legacy for your child's sake, but your entire life can't be living backwards. You have to be able to move forward.
Yeah, I could see that would be very difficult, especially for a parent. I still, to this day, there are things like my wife never got a chance to meet my grandmother, and I know they would have adored each other, and it would have been a great relationship. And in a way, there's a sort of grief that happens there, because a grief, I think, founded on regret, that she's never going to have that opportunity. Neither of them ever had that opportunity.
Well, and I call those aftershocks. Because,
Yeah.
I talk about an earthquake, and you can start getting your foundation, and something can happen in life, and it's an aftershock, and you're almost spent reeling, and it's not that you go all the way back to the point of impact where it's not as severe, but because your foundation is so fragile, it's easy for it to hinder the moving forward, and it's almost like a startling, and you become shell-shocked, or a PTSD type thing that happens in your head and in your emotions when those things happen, because you realize that the loss that you thought you had dealt with is actually larger than what you originally anticipated.
Yeah.
And, we've experienced that quite a bit of times. My husband's mother died when he was 10. And so we've experienced we've gone to her grave, and he would just sit there and weep and say, I really wish that you would have had a chance to know her. I really believe that she would have loved you. And so I understand that. And like my aunt, it was her only child. So she had no option to ever become a grandmother. So at her point of loss, not only did she lose her son, but she lost the future that she had planned on having eventually down the road. She instantly didn't have anybody to take care of her when she was older. If she needed somebody to go, pick up chicken soup, she didn't have a child any longer to say, hey, I'm sick, baby, can you bring me chicken soup? And those moments are the moments that our heart is fragile, and the longing of what should have been or could have been. And those moments, they take precedence, and that's when the sorrow and the grief can actually come back on us very strong. And so it's important to recognize when those things happen and make sure that it doesn't spiral us down. There again, it's a moment to honor and recognize what that person or what that job or what your health even meant in that season of time. but we have to live in the reality of where today is.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because you brought this up actually. Oh, sorry. I just leaned right in and yelled at you. You brought this up earlier, that this isn't just about grief because you lost someone you loved. I mean, this applies to everyday grief, losing a job and that sort of thing, and that's something I think comes home to a lot of people. This idea, I mean, we sometimes tie our identities so closely to what we do. And if something goes wrong, I've struggled with this in my life that, my career doesn't always go in the path I think it's going to go. And there are times when I sort of lament that and regret it. And I do feel a sort of grief over it. So these same principles apply there as well, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Grief is a common thread that we have in our everyday lives. I mean, okay, your favorite TV show gets canceled.
Yeah.
And okay, what do I do on Tuesday nights at 7:00 anymore? And it's a loss.
Yeah,
it is something that was a part of your life that is no longer there. And I mean, I trivialize that, but if all of a sudden Star Trek was no longer available, we have a generation of Trekkies that are going to be in withdrawal and they're going to have issues. And when Firefly was over with, I was like, what?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's a documentary. The title is going to escape me. There's a documentary about people who were fans of the show and fans of the movie, and there's a scene in which they're talking to a couple, and they literally broke down in tears because the show was gone and hadn't gotten much of a chance, And
look, an outsider, you may see in those people and say, "Oh, that is ridiculous that they were that vested in this form of entertainment."
Yeah.
But these things that we spend our time with, that we commune with, they become a part of who we are. And when those things are gone, even if it's a show cancellation, the people around them may diminish or dismiss their grief, but it's an authentic grief process that they have to walk through.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's true too because it seems really silly. I mean, but I remember plenty of times when, the end of a show or something, came around, or even just reaching the end of a book. Sometimes you have that sort of lingering sadness, and it can be, in the case of like a book, it can be a sort of sweet sadness, a sort of nostalgia.
When the Hunger Games trilogy was over with, I felt that I had lost an entire group of incredibly dysfunctional friends, and I was never going to be able to find them again.
Just hang out. People are rewriting that book left and right. You'll be able to you'll be able to get your fix. So. Man, I'm praying that people are actually feeling that way about the Citadel series. So,
I love the Citadel series. It's great. I'm.
You're the one. You're the one.
Yeah, I'm the one. I'm the one. Yes. Yes. You've done some good characters there.
Thank you, and that brings us around to your book. Because I part of this, and this podcast doesn't focus specifically on publishing and writing, but there is that element to it, and I talk to a lot of indie publishers and indie authors, especially in the other podcast I do with Nick Thacker, which is I'm going to plug it here, which is Self-Publishing Answers. But I did want to talk to you about like the process you went through in. First, what made you decide that this book needed to exist?
It was probably within a few months after my cousin dying that I realized that I was going to write this book. So that was in 2005.
Yeah.
I realized I was going to write this book, and I knew the title was going to be Shifted Vision because I knew I had to share with people how God prepared me. I've in the book I document these basically surreal experiences that were just everyday stuff that there's no way I could have connected them whatsoever for the entire week before Chris died.
Yeah.
Up until the night before he died, that were all things that weren't interconnected, but every single one of them were God using these things to prepare me to be able to walk through the loss of Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I started paying attention. Am I the only one that God has done this for? And so I would intentionally put myself with people who were grieving something and walk with them through those things to see, could I see God's hand in the middle of this? Or is it only tragedy? Is it only grief? Is it only loss?
Yeah.
And in every single circumstance, I was able to see that. And I was like, people have to know. And several years into it, I would start and I would stop. I would start and I would stop. And it just, with having small children myself and my husband always working, it just wasn't time for it. And, so I would think about it all the time, and I would wake up in the middle of the night with a new idea or something else, and I would just kind of plug it in a little bit. And so it was a lengthy process. It absolutely was. But it was an absolute God timing process as well. Mm-hmm. But I remember I kept feeling that tragedies are earthquakes. Tragedies are personal earthquakes. And I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning remembering from 1985, or was it 88? I don't know. It's in the book. In the early 80s, there was the earthquake that hit Juarez, Mexico.
Yeah.
Where it just devastated the children's hospital there and the entire community. Hundreds of thousands of people left without homes. And 9 days into them digging through the debris at the hospital, they pulled out 16 live newborn babies. Mm. They had been buried and entombed under this rubble for 9 days with no water, no one to comfort them, nobody to change diapers, nothing. They had been entombed for 9 days, and if these rescue workers would not have continued digging, that life would have never come forth.
Right.
And that is my vision of what the recovering from grief process is. Let's pick up a boulder, a remnant of your life, see what it represents, see what life is still there, and keep digging. We can't get overwhelmed by the fact that it's everything is just a mess.
Yeah.
But if we keep digging, we can find something that is hope that will inspire the world, not just us, but it'll inspire the world. It'll inspire all the people we come across, and it gives meaning. There's good stuff that can come out of it. We just have to be willing to dig and look for it.
Yeah, that's powerful. And out of this, beyond the book, you've actually developed an actual a ministry, right? A sort of
I have.
I don't want to say a counseling practice. You're not a counselor.
I'm not a counselor. I'm a life coach.
Okay.
Because what counseling does, counseling deals with pains of the past.
Yeah.
Life coaching is about moving forward.
Yeah.
And that's my message. If you stay in things of the past, then that's unhealthy grief. And there absolutely are instances. I have my own counselor that I have on speed dial whenever something comes up from my past that I need to process and work through and deal with. But coaching is about, okay, this happened. What do I need to do to move forward? Yeah. How do I let this be a part of my life, but not a defining moment that keeps me stuck here?
Yeah. Then that's invaluable. I could see that. Because even from there is that perspective of losing a loved one, but even from the losing a job or anything. I mean, you something you expected to happen didn't happen. You didn't get the bonus you were expecting, or something along those lines. How do you pick up and keep moving from that? You shift your vision at that point. You change your plan, right?
Exactly. And it's hard because you want to understand, you want to fix it, you want to wrestle this thing into submission and make it into something else. You want the outcome to have been different. And there's just something inside of us that doesn't want to let those things go.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we identify those things become who we are. And those are the ones that hurt the most.
Yeah, change is difficult, though. I mean, just in the work that I do, I mean, when I talk to clients, it's sometimes difficult just to change your perspective on how you're presenting your brand. So I can only imagine, how difficult it is. Actually, I can more than imagine. I know exactly how difficult it is to pick up after some sort of loss or tragedy, and you're forced to change. You can't stay in that same old pattern. You have to find a new route.
But also something that I've personally experienced, I had a job that I loved. I loved working with the people. I loved almost everything about it. There were days that it was a job, but the majority of the time, it was just a passion. It was who I was. And they did away with my position.
Yeah.
And I grieved that. And it wasn't that I wanted that position. It was the fact that I didn't have value enough for them to figure out a way to keep me.
Right. Yes.
And I felt rejected to the deepest part of me. And I think that's what I kept trying to fix. I wanted to be unrejected. And so, but if it wouldn't have been for that job, I would have been doing, if it wouldn't have been for them letting me go and doing away with the position, I would not have been available to write Shifted Vision.
Yeah.
When the time was right. That them letting me go in May made me available when my life circumstances changed. And September, my husband said, write your book and let's see what God does with it.
Yeah. 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 It's amazing how that happens. You know, it's sort of, today actually, I was looking back over some stuff that Tony Robbins had posted online, some old videos from his old emails years ago. And there was that same concept, you know, the idea that, well, just sort of, it came around to the idea of, you know, it's better to try something, take an action and see where it leads, but to take all the events that have led to now and use those as material for building what's to come later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And nothing, it's the back, I always go everything back to scripture. Back at the end of the loaves and fishes story, when Jesus took the few fish and the few loaves and fed thousands and thousands of people on the side of the mountain, at the very end of it, he tells his disciples, gather all the pieces, let nothing be wasted.
Yeah.
And you know, if we look back over our lives, we have all of these pieces. And God's intention is that nothing be left over. He wants to gather all of those pieces. And everything we have ever gone through, everything we have ever experienced is always to give us a tool or a story or a skill to be able to walk into our future calling, the new place he has for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's painful to start that journey.
It is. Well, I have a client right now that next month she will have been married to her husband for 30 years. Mm-hmm. 4 weeks ago, she found the credit card statement showing that he was being unfaithful.
Oh, no.
And instead of trying to fight for the marriage at all, in 6 hours, he had left the house. And and she was telling me, I have permission to talk about this. She was telling me that 30 years wasted. And I was like, it's not wasted. There were 30 years of good stuff. This one incident does not define who you have been for 30 years.
Right.
And that's where we get a skewed vision. That's where we get mixed up because we think this one thing negates everything else.
Yeah, I think that's a human trait. I've gone through that. You know, I think everyone does. And this idea that everything went fine, but it's this one thing. It's this one job loss. It's this one. You lost this person who was close to you, or you wrote a book that no one read, or something. Which,
that's okay.
That's
okay. If I write enough, sooner or later somebody's going to find one that they love, and then they're going to want to read everything I've ever written. It's just inventory in advance.
Yeah, it's all about being discoverable. That's right, inventory in advance. We keep plugging. So that's a key statement, I think, though, is that you cannot let that immediate circumstance or the thing that happened, the thing that's happening right now isn't your life, and it's not going to define your life forever. I like the statement. I hear this a lot, actually. I've read this in numerous places, that you are, you're not the result. How does this go? I'm going to completely mess this up. You're not the sum total of everything that you
that's
did.
happened to you.
Yes, yeah. You can choose
what you do with it.
Yeah. So I think I probably just confused every listener with that, but I'm going to write it more eloquently and put it in the show notes. So, so you have got, and we're closing in on our mark here. This is going remarkably fast. You are working on a new book right now.
It's kind of a recycled book.
Okay.
I realized that there was a lot of skill that I lacked with Shifted Vision the first time I wrote it, and there were things that as I went back through it, I wanted to tweak and change and expand upon, and so I'm in the process of rewriting Shifted Vision to create it to release it as a second edition.
Okay.
And this is also going to include small group discussion questions, so that if people want to use it in Bible study groups or small groups or book clubs, then it's actually a conversation part to do with it. But I'm also, for the people who want to dig deeper, and that's what I call it, Shifted Vision Digging Deeper for the workbook, where it is a true, it's kind of a coaching process where you working through this workbook, you're digging through.
Yeah.
And you're facing the things that maybe you really don't want to face. They're hard to look at, but it's learning how to let them be a part of your life, but not be your entire life.
Yeah. Yeah. They are a component, but they're not the definition.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's cool. You got a timeline on that? You know about when that's going?
My goal is for I was pretty lofty. I wanted all of it out by January 1st because that's the 2-year mark of the original release of Shifted Vision. I'm not sure that the workbook, Digging Deeper, is going to be finished by then, but Shifted Vision second edition absolutely will.
You got plenty of time. You can do it. You know,
there are days. Well, I'm at the point now where I've made enough progress that the anxiety parts are starting to come in. I've got to find an editor. I've got to look at book covers. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. So the business part of it is filtering in with the writing part of it. And I'm like, I don't like that.
You're time traveling right now. That's the same thing as holding on to bad grief. You got it. I'm going to slip into author coach mode here for a second.
Go right ahead.
So you concentrate on getting the book done. The rest of that stuff is another phase. So you don't start thinking about that stuff right now. You keep focused on the book.
Okay. Well, and I'm actually going to reverse a plug because you were my unofficial coach during Shifted Vision, and you did a lot of hand-holding with somebody who was just scared out of their mind and didn't know anything. So I greatly appreciate that. And so if anyone's listening and they don't know where to start or what to do, and all you know is that you have words that need to get on paper, call Kevin.
That's right. Thank you. I appreciate that plug. That's what this whole show is, by the way, is one big plug for my stuff. So anyway, so we're wrapping up now because I don't want to take too much of your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I'm really sorry that there was about a 5 or 10 minute gap there where I completely lost it. I don't know what happened there. You said you're using actual paper calendars now. Maybe I should go to that.
It's not going to go away.
Yeah, normally I don't have that kind of problem, but I don't know what happened there, so I'm sure it'll pop up again. But thank you so much for talking to me. And if people want to find out more about your book, it is available on Amazon. The book's called Shifted Vision, right? And
if you want to help the small entrepreneur, I make more money if you buy it from my website.
Okay, and that website
is www.shiftedvisionministries.com.
You heard it. That's go help out an indie author. So do you, when they buy it from you on the website, do you are they buying the ebook? Are they buying a physical copy? Or?
I don't have an ebook with this one. Second edition will have an ebook release with it.
I see.
It's a hard copy. I don't charge for shipping. You just buy the book, and there's even a comment section that you can tell me how you want me to personalize it. So Amazon won't have my autograph in it, but if you order it through me, then you'll get it for free shipping and you'll have it personalized as well.
That's a very clever idea. Maybe I should start doing that. Offer to you buy it straight from my site, and I'll send you a signed edition. That's interesting.
One of these days, that autograph's going to mean some money. It increases the value.
It's at least worth free shipping.
There you go.
So, all right. Well, Tammy, thanks a lot, and I wish you all the very best. You're doing some great work. I know that God's got a huge plan for you and the work that you're doing. I'm already seeing some pretty amazing things come out from your direction. So, my very best to you and your ministry.
Well, thank you, and mine back at you with the new endeavors with the coaching and the 2 different podcasts.
I'm all over the place. I never run down. So, all right, everybody, go check her out online at shiftedvisionministries.com, where you can buy a copy of her book and get it shipped to you for free and have it personalized any way you want. This has been the Word Slinger Podcast with my good friend Tammy McDonald. Take care, Tammy.
Thanks, Kev. You too.
So that was the interview with Tammy McDonald. I'm glad you were able to tune in on that. And I hope you got something out of that. And I feel like you probably did. I feel like someone out there kind of needed to hear that message, because it's when tragedy hits our lives, it becomes this thing that just takes over our story. To bring it back around to story, it takes over our story as if it's the only true part of ourselves, and that's just not true. There's so much more to our lives than this thing that has happened to us that has hurt us. We're about so much more than hurt. We define ourselves with every choice we make, with every day. So I hope that you're listening to this, that go and check out Tammy's book and hit her up, ask her some questions, because she would be thrilled to talk to you about anything you're going through. And hey, if you want a friendly word slinger to chat with, come my way. I'm always available. So in fact, on that note, you can ask me any question you want if you go to I'm working on this website, and the website has been redirected. So if you were listening last week and you got the URL, you're probably kind of confused. And I'm sorry about that. I recently shifted everything over to a new platform, and so I'm going to be building a whole new site for Word Slinger Podcast at wordslingerpodcast.com. But the temporary stopgap is if you go to kevintumlinson.com/podcast, you can click on the Call Me button there, and Google Voice, once you enter your phone number, Google Voice will call you back and let you enter our I'm all over the place this morning. Google Voice will call you back and let you give me a voicemail, and it'll record that for you, and it'll send it straight to my inbox. And then the next time we chat, I'll do my best to answer your questions, and you can ask me anything. This is and I keep swallowing. I'm sorry about that. This is a podcast about story, but that's a broad topic, and so that opens up the possibility of us talking about all kinds of crazy things. Anything that's going on in your life. You got a question about tragedy, I can pass things along to Tammy. If you got a question about if you're an author and you're trying to figure out how to get your book published, I do author coaching, so give me a ring on that. If you just want to share your story, I'm looking for people to talk to on the podcast, actually. So, and I'm looking for interesting stories, and I'll talk to just about anybody about just about anything. I got a couple of lines I won't cross, but that's probably not you. So, I hope you enjoyed this week's Word Slinger podcast. It's a little different. You don't get me talking over the music and everything this time around, because I gotta fold that in after the fact. But hey, maybe I got it working. Could have it working right now. Do I have it? Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's Word Slinger podcast. Tune in every week to hear how story can influence your culture, your career, and your life. And if you have any questions, please hit me up at kevintumlinson.com/podcast and talk to me about just about anything. Talk to me about anything. That doesn't mean I'm always going to put it on the air, but I will put questions on the air if I think I can answer them, if I think they're appropriate. So give me a shout out, and take care of yourselves out there.
Word Slinger.